The Mad Cyborg. Ever since the existence of this being was first introduced in the webcomic over 10 years ago, almost no other details has been given to us about it. To this point, the mysterious, rampaging cyborg that apparently went crazy from a malfunction in its systems during its creation has remained just that. A complete mystery. This has led to countless theories and speculations revolving around the true identity of the Mad Cyborg, with most people being split into three camps. Some say the Mad Cyborg is in fact S-Class Rank 9 hero Drive Knight. Others say that it's a creation of Dr. Bufoy's, aka Metal Knight. And some even say that in a major twist, the Mad Cyborg could be Genos himself. Sounds crazy, I know, but I'm about to say something even crazier. What if I told you guys all three of these possibilities are true? If that confused you a bit, don't worry. I'll be spending the rest of this video making it all make sense to you. So by the end of this video, you'll most certainly understand what I mean when I say this. And most importantly, come away from this video knowing exactly who the Mad Cyborg is. And just before we get started, I wanted to mention that the majority of this video will be spoiler free for you manga only readers, and I'll be giving a warning just before I start getting into webcomic stuff. But if you want no chance of being spoiled at all, make sure to subscribe and check out the other spoiler free One Punch Man content that I put out on this channel each and every week. So with that being said, let's get started. So what do we know about the Mad Cyborg so far? Well, if it was much of anything, we wouldn't have much to talk about here. The bulk of the Mad Cyborg's backstory comes in Genos' long and drawn out backstory when he first becomes Saitama's disciple. According to Genos, he was a normal 15-year-old kid when one day an ultra powerful cyborg went on a rampage and destroyed his entire town, killing his whole family in the process. Apparently the reason the cyborg went on a rampage to begin with was due to its brain being damaged just before being implanted into its cyborg body. After completely destroying Genos' town, it vanished without a trace and has not been seen since. In the aftermath, Genos was left for dead until he was saved by Dr. Kuseno, who just happened to stumble across Genos in his search for the Mad Cyborg. Genos then received a new mechanical body from Dr. Kuseno, with his new goal being to find the Mad Cyborg and one day finally destroying it. There are a few details about the Mad Cyborg that we learn later in the story, actually getting into webcomic stuff, but I'll talk about that a little bit later. What I wanted to draw focus on right now is the circumstance in which Dr. Kuseno met Genos. The burning question I have here is, did Dr. Kuseno happen to stroll through Genos' destroyed town by chance while searching for the Mad Cyborg, or was he already at ground zero when the rampage began, and after it was all over, started to frantically look for any semblance of life to help ease his burning conscience for some reason? If it's the latter, this would mean that Kuseno had to have played a part in this devastating event, doesn't it? But what part could Kuseno have played in all of this? Well, to answer that question, we have to quickly talk about two other characters that are usually at the center of the Mad Cyborg debate: Metal Knight and Drive Knight. There isn't much known about Dr. Bufoy, aka Metal Knight, other than that he's a brilliant scientist that supplies most of the Hero Association's defensive capabilities, and most of whatever else is known about him is from a potentially unreliable source. After the attack from Boros and the Dark Matter Thieves was over, Dr. Bufoy sent out an army of drones to recover the alien ship that they came in to analyze its technology. Seeing this made Genos grow more suspicious of Metal Knight, and that suspicion was deepened after Drive Knight suddenly appeared and told Genos not to trust Metal Knight, and even went as far as to call him an enemy. Seeing as how we rarely see Drive Knight do anything out of genuine concern for others, this small interaction signals to us that Drive Knight has been keeping a close eye on Dr. Bufoy for some reason, and also has something to gain from warning Genos about him. Throughout the story, we see both these characters carry themselves in a cold, calculated, and even selfish manner. That being said, I do think Dr. Bufoy operates in a much more pragmatic way than a sinister one. He refused to help the Hero Association in the Monster Association raid unless they let him carpet bomb the entire hideout, preventing hero casualties, but also killing the hostage Waganma in the process. He didn't make a single appearance in the entire arc until the very end, where he showed up to clean up the aftermath and treat everyone for radiation poisoning. In contrast, Drive Knight was also pretty vacant for much of the fighting, but did appear to assist at crucial moments. However, I will admit that the way he went about it left me questioning Drive Knight's true intentions and priorities. After defeating Neon, the dragon level cadre, Drive Knight steals power from a large portion of a city to go and join the fight against Cyrochi. Once he joined the rest of the heroes, he teamed up with Genos by combining their bodies to fight against the weakened Cyrochi. And after the fight concluded, Drive Knight quickly drops Genos as he's about to overload and leaves to analyze the Orochi samples he collected. Pretty douchey move if you ask me, but being a douche doesn't automatically make Drive Knight the Mad Cyborg. So what does make him the Mad Cyborg, along with Metal Knight and Genos like I claimed at the top of this video? To fully answer that question, I will have to go into webcomic spoilers from here on out, so this is your warning. What ties Genos, Drive Knight, and Metal Knight together in this whole Mad Cyborg plotline for me is a single conversation between Drive Knight and Genos in chapter 139 of the webcomic. In this chapter, Drive Knight finally elaborates on why he told Genos to stay away from Bufoy in the first place. Apparently, it was because it would raise a serious problem if Bufoy were to get his hands on the technology behind Genos' reinforced muscle fibers, artificial nerves, and energy core. Whether or not this is a true statement, or it's Drive Knight simply projecting his malicious intentions to get his own hands on this technology, the fact of the matter is that it's made pretty clear that the tech behind Genos is sought after for some reason. In this same conversation, Drive Knight also drops a bomb on us after claiming that he too is a victim of the Mad Cyborg, much like Genos was, also mentioning that it was a creation of Metal Knight that is now secretly locked up in Dr. Bufoy's lab. He then asks Genos to join him in breaking into Dr. Bufoy's lab and destroying it. Well, before doing that, Genos and Saitama have a visit with Dr. Kuseno to have Saitama's body analyzed. While Saitama is in his incubation chamber, 3 machine gods from the organization suddenly destroy the lab and kill Dr. Kuseno in the process. After completing their mission, one of the machine gods points out that Kuseno is number 23 on an elimination list. Now, I'm sure at this point, you guys have a similar question that I did. Why does the organization have an elimination list, and why is Kuseno on it? Well, I think the answer to this is what ties everything together. Seeing as how Dr. Bufoy has been shown to keep a low profile and apparently seems to be aware of a threat that's even greater than the Monster Association in his conversation with Child Emperor, it's likely that Bufoy is also on this elimination list, with the organization being the greater looming threat that he was referring to. It's possible that 4 years ago, Kuseno and Bufoy were part of a research group that was working under the organization, and their main task was to advance cyborg technology. One day, their hard work and research led to the creation of what will soon be known as the Mad Cyborg. While the subject's brain was being implanted into the mechanical body, something occurred that caused the newly created cyborg to go haywire. Maybe it was some god intervention that caused it, but that's a topic for another video. The newly created cyborg then went on a rampage and completely destroyed the town that Genos was living in and killed his family. After the damage was done, Kuseno then worked his way through the rubble of the lab and the town in search of any survivors, with an overwhelming feeling of guilt hanging over him. After all, it's likely that Kuseno was the mind behind the enhanced muscle fibers, artificial nerves, and energy core that gave the cyborg life in the first place. He then took some solace in the fact that there was at least one survivor, Genos, and after that day, Kuseno used the same technology that was used to create the Mad Cyborg on Genos, which then gave him the power to begin his search for justice. Unbeknownst to Genos, Kuseno has been secretly working toward righting the wrong he committed 4 years prior, while masking it as assisting Genos in his own journey. This could explain why Kuseno mentions to Saitama that he is an insignificant engineering scientist, and after, quote, many things happened, end quote, he joined Genos in his quest for justice. this event 4 years prior could be the quote-unquote many things that Kusuno is referring to. It would then also make sense why Kusuno seems so guilty in dragging Genos into his quest for the Mad Cyborg just before his death. On the other hand, Dr. Bufoy recovered the body of the Mad Cyborg and removed it from the brain that caused it to malfunction. Although he was able to replicate the technology created by Kusuno, he was able to use the technology behind the Mad Cyborg's body to create Metal Knight, and began working under the hero named Metal Knight behind the scenes while investigating the cause of the malfunction that led to the Mad Cyborg going haywire in the first place. At the same time, he is also investigating the organization who is now after him as well. Now, the final piece of all of this is Drive Knight. Where does he fit in all of it? Well, remember the brain that caused the malfunction? It's possible that Drive Knight was the original brain that went into the Mad Cyborg's first body, and after having his body taken away by Dr. Bufoy, he was left to rebuild himself and begin his search for his original body and the technology behind the energy core that made it function properly. This explains why Drive Knight's main ability is being able to transform his body and further enhance it through samples he collects from battle. This whole time, he's been trying to recreate his former ultra powerful body and has been working with the organization closely with the same goal in mind. He then joins the Hero Association because he finds out that Bufoy is there posing as Metal Knight, and to his surprise, meets another cyborg with the missing technology he was looking for. He then sets a plan in motion that keeps Genos away from Dr. Bufoy to keep him from learning the truth. Once he finally discovered the location of Dr. Bufoy's lab, he asked Genos to help him so he can collect the body and the energy core technology he needs to regain his previous form all in one place. However, unbeknownst to Genos, Drive Knight planted a tracker on him that led him straight to Kusuno's lab, allowing Drive Knight to inform the organization on the whereabouts of one of their elimination targets. Now, the only part left in this story is the final panel in chapter 141 of the webcomic, where we see what appears to be Dr. Bufoy's robot army attacking a city. This may have also been a part of the plan to frame Bufoy and make him easier to capture and eliminate as well. So with all of that context in mind, my claim at the top of the video probably makes a lot more sense now, right? Metal Knight is made from the same powerful technology that made up the body of the Mad Cyborg. Genos is made up of the energy core and enhanced muscle fibers that gave the Mad Cyborg overwhelming strength and power. And Drive Knight is the brain that caused everything to go so wrong in the first place. Each of these characters making a small part of what is known as the Mad Cyborg.